There is a golf course in Newark, Ohio, built on top of the largest geometric earthworks ever constructed by human hands. Not a memorial, not a museum, a functioning golf course with a clubhouse and greens fees, and members who play their rounds on land that was, 2,000 years ago, the most architecturally significant ceremonial complex in North America. The golfers drive carts across structures that no living person built, that no living culture claims, that no written record explains, because the people who built them left no writing, and the people who came after them had no idea what they were looking at. This is the condition of a significant portion of America's ancient past, monumental, precise, and almost entirely forgotten by the civilization that now lives on top of it. There are ruins in America that predate the Egyptian pyramids by 1,000 years. There are earthworks in Ohio that once covered 4 square miles, larger than most medieval European cities, built basket by people whose specific identity is still debated. There is a stone complex in New Hampshire that astronomically aligns to the solstices and equinoxes, and nobody agrees whether it is 4,000 years old or 200. There is a ceremonial center in Oklahoma where 600 years of accumulated burial wealth was looted in 2 years by men with shovels and no conscience, and what little remained was sold for a nickel apiece to curiosity seekers who wandered by. This list covers 10 of those places. What they have in common is not obscurity. Several of them are nationally recognized, protected, and studied. What they have in common is that the people who built them are gone. Their names are unknown, their language is unrecorded, and the structures they left behind are so large and so precise that the obvious questions, who and how and why, still don't have complete answers. By the time this list ends, the mystery that will be sitting with you is not the mystery of who built these things. It is the mystery of how a civilization managed to forget that they were built at all. Gungywamp is a complex of stone chambers, stone walls, stone circles, and what appear to be astronomical alignments, located in the woods of Groton, Connecticut, on approximately 100 acres of rocky forest that the Connecticut Antiquarian and Landmark Society has been managing since the 1970s. The name comes from the Algonquian and means something in the range of place of many rocks or swamp of rocks, depending on which translation you accept. The name is approximately the only thing about Gungywamp that everyone agrees on. The site contains stone chambers, roofed structures of stacked flat stone, built without mortar, with walls and ceilings assembled by fitting stones together with a precision that has kept them standing for however long they have been there. The chambers align, in some cases, to the sunrise at the equinoxes. On the spring and fall equinoxes, light enters the chamber at sunrise and illuminates the back wall in a pattern that would require deliberate orientation to produce. Deliberate orientation means someone chose the alignment. Someone knew what they were doing with the equinox. The question that has never been settled is when they did it. Professional archaeologists who have studied Gungywamp attribute the stone chambers to 17th and 18th century New England farmers who built underground stone chambers as root cellars and dairy storage, practical structures that needed to be cool and insulated year-round, which underground stone construction achieves effectively. This explanation has the virtue of being consistent with known colonial-era practice across New England, where stone root cellars are common. The problem with the root cellar explanation is the astronomical alignment. Root cellars do not need to align to the equinox. A farmer building cold storage has no particular reason to orient the entrance to the spring sunrise. The alignment could be coincidental. Archaeologists argue that with enough stone chambers in enough forests, some percentage will align to something by chance. But the alignment at Gungywamp is not marginal. It is precise. A second problem is the presence of a double circle stone arrangement, 2 concentric rings of standing stones, that resembles similar arrangements at sites in Ireland and Scotland that are definitively prehistoric. The Gungywamp Society, the organization that manages the site, has documented what they describe as cultural connections to the Old World, including stoneworking techniques that they argue are inconsistent with colonial-era New England practice. Professional archaeologists dispute this. H.P. Lovecraft is thought to have visited Gungywamp, or a similar site in Connecticut. His correspondence mentions stone structures in the region, and the landscape of fog-shrouded stone chambers in dense forest is precisely the kind of thing that appeared in his fiction as evidence of ancient, pre-human civilization. What is certain? People have been in this forest for a very long time. Charcoal found at Gungywamp has been dated to approximately 2000 BCE, which means human activity on the site goes back 4 millennia. Whether the stone structures are from that era, or from the colonial period, or from somewhere in between, is genuinely unsettled. The chambers are still there. The equinox light still enters at sunrise. The swamp of rocks is still exactly what the Algonquian name says it is. The Etowah Indian Mound site outside Cartersville, Georgia, was abandoned before Europeans ever set foot in the region. That fact deserves a pause. The people who built this place, who constructed 3 large platform mounds, maintained a town of several thousand inhabitants, produced ceremonial objects in copper and shell and stone that are among the finest examples of prehistoric North American art, and organized a political and religious structure complex enough to sustain all of this, were gone before anyone from Europe arrived to write anything down about them. The site was occupied from approximately 1000 CE to 1550 CE. At its peak, Etowah was home to several thousand people and served as the political and religious center of a large chiefdom that controlled much of northwestern Georgia. The 3 platform mounds, earthen structures built as elevated bases for wooden temples and the residences of chiefs, are still standing. Mound A, the largest, is 63 feet tall. It covers 3 acres at its base. It was built by people carrying earth in baskets, 1 load at a time. Hernando de Soto's expedition passed through the region in 1540. The town he encountered, described in the expedition's records as inhabited, with a chief, with ceremonial structures, was in the general area of Etowah, but apparently not Etowah itself, which the archaeological record suggests was already abandoned by then. The people who built Mound A were gone before the Spanish arrived, before anyone arrived, before any written record could capture what they knew about what they had built. The Etowah site contains a burial mound, Mound C, that yielded, when archaeologists excavated it in the 1950s, 2 marble statues, a seated male figure and a seated female figure, approximately 24 inches tall, carved in a style that appears in no other prehistoric American art. They were buried with shell gorgets, copper plates, and ceremonial regalia of extraordinary sophistication. Who these figures represent, rulers, ancestors, deities, is unknown. The specific religion that gave them meaning is unknown. The language spoken by the people who made them is unknown. The statues are now in the museum at the Etowah site. They sit in glass cases while visitors walk around them and try to understand what they are looking at. The answer is 2 marble figures carved with exceptional skill by people whose entire civilization arose, flourished, and disappeared without leaving a written record, in a place that most of the people driving past on Interstate 75 have never heard of. The Etowah Indian Mounds State Historic Site is open to the public. The mounds are accessible on foot. Mound A takes several minutes to climb. From the top, you can see the river, and the town, and the highway, and the configuration of the landscape that presumably influenced the choice of this specific site 1,000 years ago. The people who chose it are gone. The marble statues are in the glass cases. The mound is 63 feet tall and still standing. The Toltec Mounds Archaeological State Park near Scott, Arkansas, was not built by the Toltecs. The name comes from a 19th century landowner who named her plantation Toltec Farm after the famous Mesoamerican civilization, apparently because she believed the mounds on her property were connected to Mexican cultures, a theory popular in the 1800s that allowed European Americans to attribute impressive prehistoric construction in North America to anyone except Native Americans. The theory was wrong. The name stuck. The people who actually built the Toltec mounds were part of the Plum Bayou culture, a Mississippian-adjacent culture that occupied the Arkansas River Valley from approximately 600 CE to 1050 CE. What the Plum Bayou people called themselves is unknown. What language they spoke is unknown. What happened to them after 1050 CE is unknown. They built 18 mounds within an oval embankment approximately 1 mile in circumference, occupied the site for 450 years, and then stopped. By the time European settlement reached Arkansas, there was no memory of who had built the mounds or why. The site is the largest ceremonial mound complex in Arkansas and one of the most important Mississippian sites in the Mississippi River Valley. Two of the original mounds, Mound A and Mound B, are the tallest in the Mississippi River Valley north of Louisiana. Mound A reaches 49 feet. Mound B rises to 38 feet. A large oval embankment originally surrounded the site on 3 sides, with the 4th side opening toward the Arkansas River. The astronomical dimensions of the site are what distinguish it from comparable mound complexes. Archaeologists have established that the positioning of the mounds encodes precise observations of the sun and moon. 2 of the mounds are aligned to mark the winter solstice sunrise. Other alignments mark the lunar standstill, a lunar cycle that repeats every 18.6 years, when the moon reaches its maximum northern and southern declinations. Tracking the lunar standstill requires sustained observation over at least 18 years, recorded with enough precision to be meaningful. The Plum Bayou people apparently did this, translated their observations into the positioning of earthen mounds, and built a site that encodes those observations in a way that modern astronomers can read. A culture that tracked 18.6-year lunar cycles, encoded those cycles in earthwork geometry, and maintained a ceremonial center for 450 years, left behind no writing, no clear identity, and a name assigned by a 19th-century plantation owner who thought the Aztecs built it. The site is now a state park. It is not heavily visited. The mounds are there, rising from the Arkansas bottomland. The embankment is still partially visible. The lunar alignments still work, in the sense that if you stand in the right place at the right time, you see what the Plum Bayou builders intended you to see. From the ground, it looks like a raised ridge of earth about 3 feet high, curving through an Ohio hillside. From the air, and you have to see it from the air to understand what it is a snake. A 1/4-mile long snake, coiled at the tail, body undulating in 7 curves, head extending toward the horizon with jaws open, holding an oval object in its mouth. The oval aligns to the summer solstice sunset. The tail aligns to the winter solstice sunrise. The coils align to the equinoxes. Every significant solar event of the year is marked somewhere in the snake's body. The Great Serpent Mound in Adams County, Ohio, is the largest effigy mound in the world. It was built to be recognized from a height that its builders had no way to reach. No aircraft, no towers, no way to see the snake they were making from the perspective that reveals it as a snake. They built it anyway, and they got it right. The proportions, the curves, the astronomical alignments, all correct, all precise, all legible, from an altitude that the builders of the mound could never have achieved. The dating has been one of the more contentious questions in Ohio archaeology. A 1996 study of charcoal from the mound dated it to approximately 1070 CE, consistent with the Fort Ancient culture of Ohio. More recent analyses using optically stimulated luminescence, a technique that measures when sediment was last exposed to light, have produced dates around 321 BCE, which would attribute the mound to the Adena culture. The 2 dates are separated by nearly 1,400 years. The most likely explanation, which both camps have acknowledged as possible, is that both are partly right. The mound was built at one time and significantly modified at another, perhaps by a different culture entirely, who recognized what was there and added to it. The snake was not made in a single season by a single group. It was made and remade, generation by generation, culture by culture, each one working on a landscape feature that the previous ones had begun. The question of who is less settled than the question of how. The mound is 3 feet high and 1,300 feet long. It contains no burials, no artifacts, nothing that provides a direct material link to the people who built it, which is unusual for an effigy mound and is one reason the dating has been so difficult. The snake was built purely as a snake, apparently for the purpose of being a snake, without the ancillary function of housing the dead that most comparable mounds served. The Great Serpent Mound became a state park after Frederick Ward Putnam of Harvard University raised private funds to purchase and protect it in 1888. The original purpose was to prevent the mound from being plowed under, which was happening to comparable sites across Ohio at the rate of several per year in the late 19th century. Putnam succeeded. The mound is still there, on the same hillside, pointing the same way it has always pointed, toward a solstice sunset that still happens on the same evening every year. Poverty Point in northeastern Louisiana was built before the Iron Age began in Europe, before the Trojan War is believed to have taken place, before the Book of Exodus was written, before Homer composed anything. In 1700 BCE, when the people who built Poverty Point were beginning work on what would become the largest earthwork complex in North America, Egypt was in the middle of its second intermediate period, a period of political fragmentation. The New Kingdom, the era of Ramesses II and Tutankhamun, had not yet begun. The site consists of 6 concentric semicircular ridges, earthen platforms up to 6 feet high, arranged in a pattern 3/4 of a mile in diameter, surrounding a central plaza. 5 mounds punctuate the landscape around the ridges. Mound A, the largest, is 72 feet tall. Viewed from above, it is shaped like a bird in flight. The Poverty Point builders had no aircraft. They could not see the bird shape they were creating. They built it anyway. The total volume of earth moved at Poverty Point, for the ridges, the mounds, and the prepared surfaces, is approximately 750,000 cubic meters, nearly 1 million cubic yards of dirt, moved by hand, basket by basket, by people who were hunter-gatherers. This is the fact that changed everything archaeologists thought they understood about the relationship between social complexity and monument building. The prevailing model before Poverty Point was reevaluated held that monumental construction required agriculture, a food surplus to support a non-farming labor force, and a hierarchical political structure to organize and direct that labor, chiefs and kings telling workers what to do, sustained by stored grain. Poverty Point had none of this. The people who built it were hunters and fishers who moved with the seasons. No evidence of domesticated crops. No evidence of a ruling elite. No palace mounds, no differential burials suggesting rank. No artifacts indicating enforced hierarchy. The ridges they lived on appear egalitarian. The people who built a 3/4 mile earthwork complex apparently did it without anyone ordering them to. The site was abandoned around 1100 BCE. Nobody knows why. A prolonged drought, a shift in river patterns, a social reorganization that moved the population elsewhere. All have been proposed, none confirmed. The mounds and ridges the Poverty Point culture built over the course of 600 years remained, became overgrown, were eventually plowed into farmland, and were named, in the 19th century, after the cotton plantation that operated on top of them. Poverty Point became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2014. Mound A is still 72 feet tall. The bird shape is still there, visible from above, from the aircraft that the builders of the bird never had access to, looking down at the shape they built in 1700 BCE, for reasons that no written record explains. In 1933, a group of men calling themselves the Pocola Mining Company obtained a lease on a section of land in LaFleur County, Oklahoma, and began digging. They were not archaeologists. They were not historians. They were treasure hunters in the middle of the Great Depression, who had heard that the mounds on the land contained objects of value and who proceeded to excavate the most important Mississippian burial complex in North America, with shovels and no records, selling what they found for whatever they could get. For 2 years, they dug. They destroyed approximately 1/3 of the Craig Mound, the primary burial mound of the Spiro site. They found what Kansas City Star described, in 1935, as a King Tut's tomb in the Arkansas Valley. Hundreds of burials of Spiro leaders, interred with the accumulated ceremonial wealth of 600 years. Copper plates engraved with human and mythological figures. Conch shells carved with scenes from a religious cosmology that nobody alive can fully interpret. Beaded basketry. Feather and fur textiles preserved by the specific soil chemistry of the mound for 6 centuries. Effigy pipes. Ceremonial maces. Thousands of objects accumulated over the 850 CE to 1450 CE occupation of the site. The Pocola Mining Company sold the textiles by the yard. They sold shell gorgets for a nickel. Archaeologist Forrest Clements, head of the Department of Anthropology at the University of Oklahoma, arrived at the site and found, as he later described it, sections of cedar poles lay scattered on the ground, fragments of feather and fur textiles littered the whole area. It is impossible to take a single step in hundreds of square yards around the ruined structure without scuffing broken pieces of pottery, sections of engraved shell, and beads of shell, stone, and bone. The Spiro people had been one of the most powerful cultures in prehistoric North America. Located on a bend of the Arkansas River that functioned as a natural highway, they traded from coast to coast. Artifacts from Spiro have been found in Florida, in Minnesota, in New Mexico, evidence of a trade network that reached every corner of the continent. The ceremonial objects buried in the Craig Mound were the accumulated offerings of 6 centuries of a religious and political center that drew people and goods from across North America. The Pocola Mining Company sold most of it for scrap. Oklahoma passed state antiquities laws in 1935, becoming one of the first states to formally protect archaeological sites. The legislation came directly from the looting of Spiro, a legal consequence that protected countless subsequent sites at the cost of what was already lost. The University of Oklahoma began scientific excavation of what remained from 1936 to 1941. They recovered more than 600 burials and thousands of artifacts from the portions of the mound that the looters had not reached. The artifacts that the Pocola Mining Company sold are now scattered across private collections and museum holdings from Boston to Los Angeles. Some have been repatriated, most have not. The Smithsonian Institution holds a collection of Spiro material that arrived in 14 separate accessions between 1936 and 1986, assembled from various sources. The largest portion was acquired from a collector named Harry M. Trowbridge in 1958, a man who was not at Spiro during the dig, who bought objects from someone who bought them from someone else. The chain of custody already obscured by time and the casual commerce of the Depression era. The Craig Mound that the Pocola Mining Company destroyed was reconstructed in the 1970s. The reconstruction is not original. It is a facsimile, built to show visitors what the mound looked like before the men with shovels arrived. The original is gone. What was in it is scattered. The culture that built it over 600 years left traces in copper and shell that are among the finest prehistoric art in North America, and most of it was sold for a nickel in the middle of the Great Depression. The site in Salem, New Hampshire, that goes by the name America's Stonehenge, is either a 4,000-year-old astronomical complex built by people unknown, or a collection of 19th-century farm buildings and root cellars that got a dramatic name and a gift shop. Professional archaeologists lean toward the latter. Amateur researchers, the site's owners, and a significant portion of the visiting public lean toward the former. The debate has been ongoing for nearly a century, and it has been conducted with a level of passion disproportionate to the size and complexity of what is actually there. The site covers roughly 30 acres in the granite forests of Salem. It consists of dry stone walls, underground chambers, large standing stones, and a feature known as the sacrificial table, a 4-ton flat stone with a groove running around its perimeter, theorized to have been used for ritual animal or human sacrifice. Skeptics suggest it was a lye leaching stone for soap making, which is considerably less dramatic, but consistent with 19th century New England agricultural practice. The standing stones align to the summer and winter solstices, the equinoxes, and various lunar events. The alignments are accurate enough to function as an astronomical calendar. The question is whether they were designed to function that way, or whether the alignments are coincidental in a landscape of many stones. Charcoal found at the site has been radiocarbon dated to approximately 2000 BCE. This confirms human activity on the site 4 millennia ago. It does not confirm that the structures visible today were built at that time. The charcoal could represent a fireplace from a much earlier occupation on the same ground, while the stone structures themselves were built much later. William Goodwin, an insurance executive who purchased the site in 1937, was convinced it was built by Irish Culdee monks who had fled the Vikings and somehow reached New Hampshire centuries before Columbus. He was sufficiently convinced that he moved stones around the site to support his theory, which is the reason no subsequent archaeologist has been entirely confident about any analysis of the site's original configuration. Goodwin altered the evidence. Barry Fell, a marine biologist at Harvard, who became famous in the 1970s for claiming to identify ancient European and Mediterranean inscriptions at sites across North America, published analysis of what he described as Phoenician, Ogham, and Iberian Punic script at America's Stonehenge. Professional epigraphers examined his findings and concluded the marks were natural, or plow scratches, or modern additions. Fell was, by training, an expert on sea urchins. His forays into ancient languages received mostly skepticism and ridicule from the scientific community, as one account puts it. In 2019, a QAnon adherent vandalized the sacrificial table. This is not relevant to the age of the site, but it is relevant to the quality of the discourse surrounding it. What is genuinely true about America's Stonehenge is this: people were here 4,000 years ago. There are stone structures here whose origin is genuinely uncertain. The astronomical alignments are real, and their precision is real. And whether they were designed or accidental is a question that the site's complicated history of alteration and pseudoscientific study has made very difficult to answer cleanly. The site is open to the public. The gift shop is open. The alignments still work at the solstices. The sacrificial table has been repaired. Nobody knows who built it. In 1100 CE, the largest city in North America was not on the East Coast. It was not in Mexico. It was on the east bank of the Mississippi River, in what is now the state of Illinois, and it was larger than London. Cahokia, at its peak between 1050 and 1150 CE, held between 10,000 and 20,000 people within a 6-square-mile urban area. London, at the same time, had roughly the same population. Paris was smaller. The next city in the present-day United States, to match Cahokia's population, wouldn't exist for another 700 years, when Philadelphia and New York grew large enough in the late 18th century. At the center of this city stood Monk's Mound, a 4-terraced earthen platform rising 100 feet above the floodplain below, with a base measuring 955 by 775 feet. The Great Pyramid of Giza is taller. Monk's Mound has a larger base. It was built entirely by hand, over approximately 250 years, basket by basket, using an estimated 22 million cubic feet of earth. No draft animals, no metal tools, no wheels. The people who built Cahokia also built Woodhenge, a circle of massive cedar posts, each post 20 inches in diameter and 48 feet tall, arranged in arcs that align to the sunrise at the equinoxes and solstices. From the center of the circle, on the spring equinox, the sun rose directly over Monk's Mound. The Cahokians built an astronomical calendar large enough to be visible from across their city, calibrated to the structure at the city's center, maintained over 4 centuries as the cedar posts rotted and were replaced. Around 1350 CE, Cahokia was abandoned. No battle, no fire, no catastrophe that archaeology has identified definitively. The most widely accepted explanation involves the combination of prolonged drought, soil exhaustion from intensive agriculture, deforestation of the surrounding landscape for construction materials and fuel, and political instability that may have followed a period of concentrated elite power. None of these explanations fully accounts for the speed and completeness of the abandonment. The people dispersed. Where they went, which of the later Midwest and Southeast cultures are their descendants, is a question that current research is slowly answering through genetic and archaeological analysis. The most likely answer is that the Cahokian population did not disappear, but redistributed across the Mississippi Valley into the communities that European explorers encountered in the 16th and 17th centuries. When French missionaries arrived near the site in 1699, they found no city, only mounds. They built their mission at the base of the largest one and named the area after the local tribe, the Cahokia people, who had not, in fact, built the mounds. The mounds were already centuries old and unexplained when the French arrived. The name of the people who built them had already been lost. Cahokia Mounds is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Monk's Mound is still 100 feet tall. The woodhenge posts have long since rotted, but their positions, marked now by red circles on the ground, still align to the same celestial events they were built to mark. On the spring equinox, if you stand at the center of the reconstructed woodhenge and face Monk's Mound, the sun rises over it. The city is gone. The mound is still there. The sun still rises. In the high desert of northwestern New Mexico, in a canyon with less than 9 inches of annual rainfall, people built the largest buildings in North America and connected them with 400 miles of precision-engineered roads. Pueblo Bonito, the centerpiece of the Chaco Canyon complex, is a D-shaped structure 5 stories tall, containing approximately 650 rooms. At its peak in the 11th century, it was the largest building in North America by room count, a record it held for 800 years, until the emergence of comparable structures in the 19th century. It was built between roughly 850 and 1150 CE, in a canyon where the nearest reliable water source required significant engineering to access, using sandstone blocks that construction workers quarried from the canyon walls with stone and wood tools. The buildings aligned to cardinal directions with a precision that required sustained astronomical observation over decades. The main facade of Pueblo Bonito faces true south. The building's corner windows are positioned so that on the winter solstice, the first rays of the sunrise pass directly through them to illuminate interior walls in specific patterns. The people who built these windows knew exactly where the sun would be on the shortest day of the year and designed the architecture to respond to it. The roads are the detail that most disrupts the assumption that Chaco's builders were simply very good at construction. The Great North Road runs due north from Chaco Canyon for at least 30 miles. It is perfectly straight, not approximately straight, not following terrain contours, but precisely straight, over hills and through arroyos, crossing canyons on stairways cut into the rock face. It is 30 feet wide and maintains that width consistently. It was engineered to go straight because straightness mattered more than efficiency, and nobody currently studying Chaco Canyon fully understands why. LiDAR mapping has revealed that the road system extends much further than the original ground surveys established. The total extent of the Chaco road network is still being mapped. The roads connect Chaco Canyon to more than 150 outlier communities across the Colorado Plateau, smaller versions of the architectural forms developed at Chaco, extending the Chacoan influence across an area larger than France. Around 1150 CE, Chaco Canyon was abandoned. The drought that the tree ring record shows began around 1130 CE is the most cited cause, but the abandonment was not immediate. The population declined over decades rather than departing suddenly. Where the Chacoans went is reasonably well understood. They are the ancestors of the modern Pueblo peoples of the Rio Grande Valley, the Hopi, the Zuni. Those communities exist today, maintain oral traditions that connect them to the Great House ancestral period, and have ongoing relationships with Chaco Canyon as a sacred ancestral site. What remains in the canyon is extraordinary and accessible. The National Park Service manages Chaco Culture National Historical Park, and the road that leads to it is unpaved for the last miles, deliberately kept that way to limit casual traffic. On clear nights, the park maintains one of the darkest skies in the continental United States. The stars above Chaco Canyon are the same stars the builders of Pueblo Bonito used to orient their buildings. The largest geometric earthwork complex ever built by human hands is located in Newark, Ohio, and less than 10% of it survives. The original Newark Earthworks, constructed by the Hopewell culture between approximately 100 BCE and 400 CE, covered more than 4 square miles of the Licking Valley in central Ohio. It consisted of an octagon connected to a circle, a great circle enclosure, a large square enclosure, and a series of parallel walls extending for miles across the landscape, all connected, all geometrically precise, all aligned to astronomical events with an accuracy that continues to generate research papers in peer-reviewed journals. 7 million cubic feet of earth were moved to build it. 21 million baskets, by one estimate, each basket carried by hand, each load placed deliberately in the position that would produce, when viewed from sufficient distance, a perfect octagon, a perfect circle, walls at perfect right angles. The octagon, the largest component still surviving, contains 50 acres within its walls. The geometric relationship between the octagon and the attached circle has been analyzed by astronomers and mathematicians for decades. The diameter of the circle, when squared, fits exactly within the octagon. The alignments of the 8 sides of the octagon mark the 8 points of the lunar standstill cycle, the 18.6-year cycle when the moon reaches its maximum and minimum risings and settings. Tracking the lunar standstill requires sustained observation over at least 2 decades and mathematical sophistication sufficient to translate those observations into earthwork geometry. The Hopewell people did this between 100 BCE and 400 CE, and then, around 500 CE, the culture declined. The earthwork construction stopped. The elaborate burial practices stopped. The trade networks that had connected Hopewell communities across the continent contracted. Within a century or two, the communities that had built the Newark Earthworks had reorganized into something different, and the specific knowledge of what the earthworks meant and why they were built began to dissipate. When European American settlement reached central Ohio in the early 19th century, the Newark Earthworks were already ancient and unexplained. Ephraim Squire and Edwin Davis documented the site for the Smithsonian Institution in 1848 and recognized it as the largest earthwork complex in the world. The documentation was published in the first volume the Smithsonian ever produced. Then the city of Newark was built on top of it. By 1900, the Licking County Courthouse occupied part of the site. A fair grounds covered another section. An athletic park sat on another. Most of the original 4 square mile complex disappeared under streets and buildings and agricultural land, one section at a time, over the course of the 19th and early 20th centuries. The Mound Builders Country Club was established in 1910 and built its golf course on the Octagon, the largest surviving section of the Newark Earthworks. The fairways run through the earthwork enclosures. The octagon walls are the rough. The golf course has been there for 114 years. The Ohio History Connection owns the land. The golf club has a lease that has been renewed periodically since 1910. Negotiations over public access have been ongoing for decades. In 2022, following renewed public pressure, the Ohio History Connection announced that the lease would not be renewed when it expires, and that the Octagon would open fully to public access. The Newark Earthworks were inscribed as Ohio's first UNESCO World Heritage Site in September 2023, as part of a group nomination of Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks. The golf course is still there. The Great Circle, a separate section of the earthworks encompassing 30 acres within a circular wall, is fully accessible as a state park. Standing inside it, you are standing in a structure that was built when the Roman Empire was expanding across Europe, when Jesus of Nazareth had not yet been born, by people whose specific identity is lost, and whose reasons for building with this specific precision are still being debated. The octagon lunar alignments still work. On the appropriate nights in the 18.6-year cycle, the moon rises exactly where the Hopewell builders positioned their walls to mark it. The golfers play their rounds. The moon keeps rising. Every site on this list raises the same question, and none of them answer it. The question is not who built these things. In most cases, archaeology has established the approximate culture and the approximate era. The Hopewell built the Newark Earthworks. The Plum Bayou culture built the Toltec Mounds. The ancestors of the modern Pueblo peoples built Chaco Canyon. The question is, what happened to the knowledge? How do you build a city of 20,000 people and have it disappear so completely that when French missionaries arrived 350 years later, they named the area after a tribe that hadn't built the mounds? How do you construct a road network of 400 miles and have it become invisible under the New Mexico desert, rediscovered only when LiDAR mapping made it possible to see the landscape from the air? How do you build the largest earthwork complex in the world and have a golf course end up on part of it because the city built on top of it didn't realize what it was sitting on? The answer, in most cases, is simple and unsatisfying. Populations dispersed, oral traditions fragmented, under the pressure of epidemic disease and displacement, and the replacement of one cultural system with another, and the specific knowledge of what these places were and what they meant got lost in the same way that most specific knowledge gets lost. Not all at once, not dramatically, but piece by piece, over generations, until the last person who knew was gone, and nobody had written it down. These places are still here. The mounds are still rising from the Ohio floodplain, and the Louisiana bottomland, and the Georgia hillsides. The canyon walls at Chaco are still standing in the high desert. The snake at Adams County is still pointing at the solstice. The earthworks at Newark are still the largest geometric enclosures ever built. What is gone is the context, the people, the language, the specific reasons, the names of the builders, and the names of what they built. What remains is the evidence that the builders were there, that they were capable of extraordinary things, and that the civilization that replaced them was not always careful enough to find out what it was replacing. Subscribe for more of the America that stayed, and the America that we're still trying to understand. New videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.